Intellectual property has become one of the most valuable assets in modern business. For many organizations today, the value of their intangible assets, like patents, trademarks, and copyrights, exceeds the value of their physical assets, such as buildings and equipment. Intellectual property comes in many forms. These include music, recordings, software, movies, artwork, inventions, and discoveries. When considering the purchase of intellectual property, it's important to understand exactly what you're buying. There are several reasons why intellectual property changes hands. Sometimes creators lack the resources to implement their ideas. For instance, an inventor might develop a unique tool but not have the capital to manufacture it. In such cases, selling the intellectual property to a company with production capabilities makes sense. Similarly, authors or musicians might sell their works when they cannot publish or distribute them independently. Intellectual property transactions take various forms. An outright purchase transfers full ownership rights to the buyer. Licensing agreements allow use of the intellectual property while the original owner retains ownership. Assignments legally transfer ownership rights from the original owner to the buyer. Joint ventures and partnerships involve sharing ownership and rights to intellectual property. And mergers and acquisitions may be undertaken specifically to gain access to valuable intellectual property portfolios. Before purchasing intellectual property, conducting thorough due diligence is critical. This process helps assess the quality, enforceability, and ownership of the assets. Ownership verification ensures the seller has clear title to the intellectual property with no existing disputes. Registration and documentation checks confirm that patents, trademarks, and copyrights are properly registered and current. Investigating legal risks helps identify any litigation, infringement claims, or licensing restrictions that might affect the value. Determining the scope of rights is also essential. Some intellectual property protections may be limited to specific countries or regions rather than providing global coverage. Reviewing contractual obligations helps identify existing licensing agreements, employee contracts, and third-party agreements that could impact how the intellectual property can be used. Valuing intellectual property requires specialized methods. Market-based valuation compares the asset to similar properties that have been sold. Cost-based valuation estimates what it would take to create or replace the intellectual property, including research and development expenses, legal fees, and production costs. Income-based valuation calculates the present value of future earnings expected from the asset. The relief from royalty method determines value by estimating the hypothetical royalties that would be paid if the intellectual property were licensed instead of owned. Once a deal is finalized, ensuring a smooth transfer of rights involves several steps. A legally binding intellectual property transfer agreement outlines the terms of the sale, warranties, and representations of ownership. Official documents must be filed with government agencies like the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Third parties with existing licensing agreements must be notified of the ownership change. Business records, contracts, and branding materials should be updated to reflect the new ownership. And security measures must be implemented to protect proprietary information during the transfer. Buyers should be aware of common risks when purchasing intellectual property. Ownership may be unclear, with rights disputed or shared among multiple parties. Legal challenges such as pending lawsuits or infringement claims can reduce value and create financial liability. Some intellectual property rights have expiration dates that affect their long-term value. Incomplete or missing registration records can result in unenforceable rights. And contractual restrictions may limit how the intellectual property can be used. Alternatives to buying intellectual property outright include licensing, which allows use of the property while the original owner maintains ownership. Joint ventures create partnerships where intellectual property rights and benefits are shared. Acquiring businesses that own valuable intellectual property can be another approach when the intellectual property is integral to the business operations. Understanding the process of buying intellectual property, conducting proper due diligence, accurately valuing assets, and mitigating risks are essential steps for any business looking to expand its intellectual property portfolio. With careful planning and proper legal guidance, acquiring intellectual property can provide significant competitive advantages and create new opportunities for growth and innovation.